Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2010 superhero black comedy titled Super. Now, Super runs for 1 hour and 36 minutes long. It is directed by James Gunn. It is produced by Ted Hope and Miranda Bailey. The script was written by James Gunn. The score was done by Tyler Bates. The cinematography by Steve Gaynor, and the editing was done by Kara Silverman. And the stars of the movie are Rainn Wilson, Ellen Page, Liv Tyler, Kevin Bacon, Nathan Filion, Gregg Henry, Michael Rooker, Andre Royo, Sean Gunn, Stephen Blackheart, and Linda Cardellini. Now, Super has been defined as a comedy by the mass, but it surely will likely leave you in doubt. At first, we are led to the introduction as Frank, being a kind and pathetic soul, only ended up believing that he's a deranged man with fueled intentions that are much more deadly. This is far from anything that can classify as hilarious. It is assumed that director-writer James Gunn intended it to be comical, but once the camera focuses on a wannabe girl superhero's face annihilated, there's really nothing to laugh about. I guess it all sums down to one's particular taste into what they think is funny and what they think is downright sickening. Seeing Ellen Page of Juno fame is co-starring here, we're probably not expecting things high above the intellectual ratio. Most viewers can't stand stuff based on irony or predictability. I guess to approve of this movie, one would have to expect something funny will come along, only to realize the supposed comedy is too dark and very cruel in its delivery. Super stars Rainn Wilson as Frank Darbo, a mundane short-order cook who is married to the very flexible Sarah, played by Liv Tyler. He's a loser who shows no signs of ever changing his ways. He is also observably stupid and oblivious, and he is an easy sucker to slick drug dealer Jacques, played by Kevin Bacon. Sarah is a recovering drug addict and seems to have a fine level of sweetness until she is mesmerized to the lowest denominator of the human species, that is Jacques, who also runs a strip club. When Jacques comes to his humble abode looking for Sarah, the naive Frank asks no questions and serves eggs to his rival host. Eggs with a side of bacon. Get it? The comic timing would be all over that particular scene. It has the ability to go in various directions, leaning towards laugh-out-loud moments. Too bad it chooses not to. So Jacques kidnaps Sarah, and Sarah's drug habit has returned and utilizes her to some dark territory, and now it's up to Frank to try to save her. This puts, of course, Frank in a state of depression, so while tuning into a cheesy religious channel, he gets inspiration from a superhero character and tries to emulate his traits. In search for more inspiration to being a vigilante, Frank goes to a comic book store, and there he meets a pretty little clerk named Libby, played by Ellen Page, who claims she's 22 but has the mindset of someone much younger. Frank, in his mind, thinks Jacques is like a superhero villain and has now adapted the alter ego, the Crimson Bolt, who wears a cheap-looking superhero costume that resembles the Flash that he patched together on his wife's sewing machine. His weapon of choice is a pipe wrench, which may look small but very lethal enough to cause fractured skulls when hit on impact. In one particular funny scene, he takes himself to a place of concealment behind dumpsters on the lookout for oncoming crime doers, and after getting pounded mercilessly by thugs, he takes his trusty wrench and goes after the thugs, nearly killing them. The Crimson Bolt is now a local news feature, and when Libby finds out that Frank is the Crimson Bolt, she decides to pair up with him and go as his sidekick, Bolty. Now, even though the synopsis is leaned towards satire, it really lacks in anything humorous. Sure, Wilson and Page bring a level of satirical intentions with them, and Kevin Bacon acts like he's in a bigger and better picture where his talent isn't wasted. The film has more dreariness than what it is intended for. But there's still a lot I like about Wilson's performance. I mean, he plays a rather ditzy klutz and succeeds in keeping it real by thinking he's not trying to be funny, which is really effective. If only the script would have given him that ability to keep on this trend, the film would have passed off as an effective satirical comedy drama. And even though the set pieces of satire can be seen through the villainous role of Jacques, his mansion, his goons, his drugs and his evil intentions. But then we have to ask ourselves, is he any more evil than our protagonist who feels his defensive mechanism is to incapacitate his adversaries by fracturing their brains with a wrench while claiming that he's an advocate from God? I don't think so. When the Three Stooges used to bop each other, that was funny because it was intended that way. But when more realistic characters are doing the same thing, it's really not that funny. Super falls victim to a desperate state of immoral intentions, and by the time you get to the third act, not in the sense of a black comedy because it's not a comedy. Do all films have to have an organic level from start to finish? Not necessarily, but it's shameful when the viewers get hoodwinked into expecting something only to end up being shortchanged. I'm all for films that have some levels of intensity, and a lot of them have that as a way to keep us on the edge of our seats. Super has the making of a film whose mindset is on dark satire with an original take on the superhero film, but the purpose rests on a more destructive impulse designed to mess with our brains. So do I recommend this movie? I don't think so. I mean, it's just way too dark to be comical. Plus, I don't know if I actually think this movie is funny. I mean, there are a lot of people who fell victim to Frank's wrath, just as much as, Jacques and his goons have done a lot of bad. So it's kind of hard to determine which is the more or less of two evils, because, one person thinks that they're doing good when they're really doing just as bad, and some people seem to get incapacitated with this wrench. To people, maybe some of them deserve it, other people simply don't. And then when the smoke clears, and when he finally does rescue Sarah still doesn't stay with him in the end, and he ends up being alone. I mean, she has eventually, even though he may have saved her, in the long run, she ends up saving herself. So then it comes to a point where this movie is completely null and void. So I can't really say that I could really recommend this movie very well. Even though the intentions were good, even though it had the intentions of being sort of like a satirical comedy in the sense of the movie Kick-Ass, it still falls short. So for that, I give this movie a 5 out of 10. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. Just remember, be kind, be courteous, and don't be rude. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Carrot Writer saying keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.